The sun had barely risen over the Syrian desert when Catherine Blackwood slipped through the compound's blind spot. Three armed guards patrolled the perimeter, unaware that America's most classified weapon was already inside. Kate moved like a shadow across the courtyard, her training rendering her nearly invisible despite standing in plain sight. The KA-bar combat knife strapped to her thigh remained untouched. Tonight would require precision, not bloodshed. Through her ANPVS-14 night vision monocular, the world appeared in shades of green. The intelligence was solid. An American aid worker was being held in the eastern wing. Three guards, minimal electronic surveillance. A straightforward extraction. Kate paused at the corner, listening. The first guard approached AK-47, slung casually over his shoulder, cigarette dangling from his lips. When he turned to flick his ash, she moved. One hand covered his mouth while the other applied precise pressure to his carotid artery. 8 seconds of restricted blood flow, and he slumped unconscious. Kate lowered him silently to the ground, zip-tied his wrists, and moved on. The second guard never saw her. The third had time only to widen his eyes before Kate executed a textbook armbar takedown, using his own momentum against him. Not a shot fired, not an alarm raised. Inside the building, Kate found the hostage exactly where intelligence had placed him, James Wilson, 38, humanitarian worker from Colorado, bound to a metal chair, his face bruised but his eyes alert. United States military, Kate whispered, cutting his restraints. We're leaving now. Stay close. 15 minutes later, Kate transmitted from 2 miles outside the compound. Tango Victor 6, actual. This is Phoenix. Target secure. Package intact. Request extraction at Oscar Mike. Time hack 0400. The response came immediately. Phoenix, this is Tango Victor 6. Extraction confirmed. Well done. Aboard the Black Hawk helicopter, Kate removed her tactical gear while the medical team attended to Wilson. The mission was complete, but her work was just beginning. Within 12 hours, she would be back at Naval Station Norfolk, resuming her cover identity. No one there would suspect that the quiet logistics officer had just executed a high-risk extraction on foreign soil. No one except Commander William Donovan. Commander William Iron Bill Donovan stood at the window of his Pentagon office watching distant aircraft approach Reagan National. At 72, his 6-foot frame remained imposing, despite the decades since his active duty as a Navy SEAL. The Desert Storm campaign ribbon on his shadow box told only a fraction of his story. The classified operations during the Cold War would never appear on any metal display. His phone buzzed. The secure message read simply, Phoenix returning to nest. Donovan allowed himself a small smile. Catherine Blackwood had completed another successful mission. His protege was proving what he had argued for years, that the right woman could become every bit as effective as any male SEAL. Kate was not merely succeeding. She was excelling in ways that validated his most controversial program. The intercom buzzed. Admiral Barnes is here to see you, sir. Send him in. Admiral Richard Barnes entered the office with the confident stride of a boy accustomed to command. At 68, his silver hair and weathered face reflected decades of naval service. Like Donovan, he was a product of the Cold War Navy, a man shaped by the constant shadow dance with Soviet adversaries. Bill Barnes nodded, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. Another success for your Phoenix program. Catherine performed flawlessly, Donovan replied. Hostage recovered, no casualties, no detection. Outstanding, Barnes leaned forward, and her cover remains intact at Norfolk. As far as we know, she's maintained the logistics specialist identity without incident for 3 years. Barnes studied his old friend. They had served together during operations that remain classified even now, 3 decades later. You know, I've supported this program since inception, Bill, but I still worry about maintaining secrecy. If word gets out that we have female SEALs, it won't, Donovan interrupted. Kate and the others understand the stakes. Besides, who would suspect that a 5'6" logistics officer is actually one of our most effective operators? The Admiral nodded slowly. Let's hope it stays that way. The political blowback alone would be... He trailed off, leaving the implications unspoken. Keep me updated. I want weekly reports on her Norfolk assignment. That Russian intelligence network isn't going to expose itself. After Barnes left, Donovan pulled a worn photograph from his desk drawer. It showed a younger version of himself standing beside a teenage girl with fierce determination in her eyes. His daughter Sarah had wanted nothing more than to follow in his footsteps. Her death in a terrorist bombing in Beirut 20 years ago had nearly destroyed him. When Catherine Blackwood had appeared at Bud's training 7 years ago, Donovan had seen the same determination in her eyes. He had become her advocate, her mentor, and eventually a father figure. Now she was proving that his faith had been justified. He replaced the photograph and turned to his computer. The Russian intelligence threat at Norfolk was growing. Kate was in position, but time was running short. The C-130 touched down at Naval Air Station Oceana just after 0400. Kate, now dressed in standard Navy utilities, with her hair pulled back in a regulation bun, deplaned with several other returning service members. No one would connect this unremarkable logistics officer with the special operator who had just completed a mission in Syria. 2 hours later, Petty Officer Catherine Blackwood reported for duty at Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval base in the world. Her small apartment off base showed no signs of her alternative life, no specialized equipment, no combat medals, nothing that would reveal her true role. Even her morning routine was carefully calculated. She maintained sufficient fitness for her logistics role, but concealed the exceptional capabilities required of a SEAL. The sprawling Norfolk Naval Complex bustled with morning activity. Aircraft carriers loomed along the pier, destroyers and cruisers nestled between larger vessels. Thousands of sailors and officers moved purposefully between buildings, many unaware of the classified operations being planned and executed around them. Kate entered Building 3, nodding to the security guard at the entrance. Her office in the logistics department provided the perfect cover. As a supply chain specialist, she had legitimate reasons to access most areas of the base and interact with personnel across multiple departments. It was the ideal position from which to monitor suspected security breaches. "Morning, Blackwood," Lieutenant Commander Simmons greeted her as she entered the office. "Ready for the quarterly inventory assessment?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "I've already prepared the preliminary reports." Her voice was softer here than during operations, her posture slightly less commanding. These subtle adjustments were second nature now, part of the complex identity management that kept her cover intact. At Norfolk, she wasn't the elite operator who could neutralize 3 armed men in seconds. She was simply Kate from logistics, efficient, unremarkable, and easily overlooked. As she settled at her desk, Kate activated her computer and began reviewing supply chain data. But her trained eyes were scanning for anomalies that had nothing to do with logistics. Commander Donovan had briefed her extensively on what to watch for: unexpected access requests, unusual communications patterns, personnel displaying signs of coercion or financial strain. According to intelligence, a Russian network had infiltrated Norfolk, targeting next-generation naval technologies. Kate's mission was to identify the operatives without revealing her own identity or capabilities. It was delicate, painstaking work, the kind of mission that couldn't be resolved with swift, decisive action like a hostage rescue. Her secure phone vibrated with an encrypted message. 4 new arrivals today. Potential interest. Files attached. Kate accessed the encrypted files through a hidden partition on her government-issued device. 4 naval officers had just transferred to Norfolk from various postings. All had the requisite clearances to access sensitive areas. All had exemplary service records. But intelligence suggested that one might be compromised, either willingly working for Russian interests or being coerced through blackmail. The first file showed Lieutenant Robert "Rob" Mitchell, 25, from Austin, Texas. Third-generation military, graduated top of his class from Annapolis. Father was a brigadier general currently stationed at the Pentagon, physically imposing at 6'2" with commendations for leadership and tactical excellence, notably traditional in his views about military service roles. The second file belonged to Ensign Jason Chen, 24, from San Francisco. Parents were first-generation immigrants from Taiwan. Brilliant technical mind with specialized training in communication systems. Slightly built with a history of struggling with physical training requirements, but compensating with technical expertise. Third was Lieutenant Marcus Thompson, 23, from Brooklyn. Former college athlete with exceptional physical capabilities. His psychological profile suggested impatience and a tendency to take shortcuts when procedures seemed inefficient. The final file showed Ensign Eric Adams, 24, from Columbus, Ohio. Son of a Methodist minister with a strong ethical framework noted throughout his evaluations. Quieter than the others, but with strong leadership potential based on his ability to make principled decisions under pressure. Kate memorized the details, then closed the files. Her task was to observe these four without raising suspicions. If one was indeed compromised, they would eventually make a mistake. Her job was to be watching when it happened. The morning proceeded routinely until 1100 hours, when Kate was assigned to oversee a weapons systems inventory in the secured storage facility. As she entered her security code and pushed through the heavy doors, she found the space already occupied. Lieutenant Mitchell and his three colleagues were conducting what appeared to be an orientation tour. Mitchell, with his imposing height and confident bearing, was explaining something about the targeting systems to the others. This sector houses the Advanced Targeting Module, or modules for the new destroyer class, he was saying. These systems represent a significant leap forward in naval combat capabilities. Kate moved quietly to her assigned inventory section, pulling up the electronic manifest on her tablet. She kept her head down, appearing focused on her work while monitoring their conversation through her peripheral vision. Mitchell noticed her presence and paused. "Logistics," he asked, his tone carrying a slight edge of dismissal. "Yes, sir," Kate replied, her voice professionally neutral. "Quarterly inventory assessment." "Carry on then," Mitchell said, turning back to his colleagues. But Kate noticed Jason Chen watching her with unusual intensity before he redirected his attention to Mitchell's explanation. As she methodically checked inventory against the manifest, Kate observed Chen surreptitiously photographing equipment serial numbers with his phone. The action wasn't explicitly prohibited for someone with his clearance, but it was unusual and unnecessary given the digital access he already possessed. The group continued their tour, moving deeper into the facility. Kate maintained her inventory work, but positioned herself to overhear their conversation. Most of it was standard orientation discussion, but occasional phrases stood out: specific questions about communication frequencies, patrol schedules, and security rotation patterns. She completed her assigned inventory section and moved to the next, which conveniently brought her closer to the officers. Mitchell was demonstrating the security protocols for accessing the highest sensitivity equipment. "This requires dual authentication," he explained, then glanced at Kate with narrowed eyes. "We should probably discuss the rest elsewhere. Some information isn't appropriate for all ears." The implication was clear: as a logistics officer, Kate wasn't entitled to certain information. It was a common attitude among combat-oriented personnel towards support staff, particularly female support staff. In this case, it worked perfectly for her cover. "Of course, sir," she said, stepping back with appropriate deference. "I'll continue my inventory in the next section." As she moved away, she heard Mitchell's lowered voice. "Logistics personnel, they give anyone a uniform these days." The comment was followed by chuckles from Thompson and Chen, though Kate noticed Adams remained silent, looking slightly uncomfortable. Kate completed her inventory and left the facility without further interaction with the officers. Outside, she sent a coded message to Donovan. "Initial contact established. Chen showing interest in serial numbers. Mitchell displaying standard bias. Continuing observation." The response came almost immediately. "Noted. Weekly debrief moved up. 2,000 hours. Usual location." At precisely 2,000 hours, Kate entered a quiet bar 3 miles off base. The anchor room was popular with Navy personnel, its walls adorned with naval memorabilia spanning decades. She spotted Commander Donovan at a corner table nursing what appeared to be whiskey, but was almost certainly apple juice. His cover as a retired officer who enjoyed mentoring young sailors was well established. "Catherine?" He nodded as she took the seat across from him. "How was Syria?" "Straightforward," she replied quietly. "The intelligence was accurate. Minimal resistance." Donovan nodded, his weathered face revealing nothing to potential observers. "And our new arrivals?" "Chen is the most obvious suspect," Kate said. "He's documenting equipment in ways that exceed normal orientation procedures, but it feels almost too obvious." "Classic misdirection technique," Donovan agreed. "The KGB used it regularly during the Cold War. One operative draws attention while another operates undetected." He took a sip from his glass. "I once spent 6 months tracking the wrong Soviet agent in Berlin because of that exact strategy. Nearly cost us an entire network." Kate considered this. Mitchell has the access and the attitude that would make him difficult to question if discovered. Thompson seems more interested in advancing his career than anything else. Adams is harder to read. He seems uncomfortable with some of the others' behaviors. Trust none of them, Donovan advised. The best operatives are the ones you least suspect. He slid a folded napkin across the table. Kate pocketed it without looking. New intelligence, he explained. Surveillance detected communications consistent with Russian operational patterns. They're accelerating their timeline. Why the urgency? Kate asked. The new targeting systems are being deployed next month. If they're going to acquire the technical specifications, it has to happen soon. Donovan leaned forward, his voice dropping further. This isn't just about technology, Catherine. Our counterintelligence suggests this operation is being directed by an old adversary, codename Frost. Kate's expression remained neutral, but she recognized the significance. Frost was a legendary KGB operative during the Cold War, responsible for numerous penetrations of Western intelligence services. Most had assumed he had retired after the Soviet collapse. You've encountered him, she asked. Donovan's eyes took on a distant look. Baghdad, 1991. Moscow, 1985. Berlin, 1978. 3 times our paths crossed. 3 times he escaped. He refocused on Kate. If Frost is running this operation, the stakes are even higher than we thought. He doesn't involve himself in routine intelligence gathering. Kate absorbed this information, recalculating the risk assessment. I'll adjust my approach. More direct observation. Be careful, Donovan cautioned. Frost specializes in identifying undercover operatives. Your cover is strong, but he's exposed dozens of agents over his career. As they finished their meeting, Donovan placed his hand briefly over Kate's. The gesture would appear paternal to any observers. Sarah would have been about your age now, he said quietly. Kate nodded. She knew how much Donovan's daughter had meant to him, how her death had nearly broken him. Their relationship had evolved beyond handler and operative to something resembling family. I won't let you down, she promised. The following morning, Kate arrived at Norfolk earlier than usual. The base was quieter at 05:30, with fewer personnel to notice her movements. She used the time to access the physical security logs, which was for the weapons storage facility, checking which areas Chen and the others had visited after she'd left. The logs showed they had spent an additional 47 minutes in the facility, including 12 minutes in a section containing the classified targeting system components. Everything appeared procedurally correct. They had the clearance and authorization for such access, but the timing and duration warranted additional scrutiny. At 07:30, Kate was restocking office supplies when she overheard Mitchell's voice from the adjacent hallway. The problem with the modern military, he was saying, is that we're sacrificing combat effectiveness for political correctness. My father says the standards have been lowered across the board to accommodate diversity quotas. Maybe some people just want to serve their country, came Adams's quieter response. Sure, but there are appropriate roles, Mitchell insisted. Look, my sister tried for naval aviation. She's smart, physically fit, but she couldn't meet the same standards as male pilots. Instead of accepting reality, she claimed discrimination. That's the mentality that's weakening our military. Kate continued her work, apparently oblivious to the conversation, while capturing every word. Mitchell's attitude wasn't unusual in military circles, particularly among those from traditional military families. Whether it indicated anything beyond conventional bias remained to be seen. Later that morning, Kate was assigned to verify a shipment of communication equipment. As she entered the loading dock area, she found Jason Chen inspecting a crate of newly arrived components. Ensign Chen, she acknowledged professionally. Can I help you with something? This area is scheduled for logistics processing this morning. Chen looked momentarily startled. Just familiarizing myself with the new comm systems. He explained, his recovery almost seamless. I'll be responsible for implementation next week. Kate nodded, noting how his left hand casually moved to his pocket, likely securing something he'd been holding. Of course, sir. The technical specifications should be available through your department. These are still under inbound quarantine until properly logged. Right, Chen said with a tight smile. I'll access them through proper channels. As he left, Kate casually positioned herself to observe his departure through the reflection in a metal cabinet. Chen removed his phone immediately upon exiting, typing rapidly. Reporting to a handler or simply making notes, impossible to determine without more evidence. Kate proceeded with her assigned task, meticulously logging the shipment while contemplating her next move. Direct surveillance would be risky without additional resources. She needed to create an opportunity for closer observation. That opportunity arrived unexpectedly at 1400 hours. Lieutenant Commander Simmons approached her desk with an unusual request. Blackwood, we need someone to provide a logistics overview to the new officers' orientation group. Lieutenant Harmon is out sick, and you're the most knowledgeable alternative. Of course, sir, Kate replied, masking her interest in this perfect opening. When and where? Conference room B, 30 minutes. Just a basic rundown of supply chain procedures and how they can expedite equipment requests. 20 minutes tops. Kate prepared her presentation, selecting information that would appear routine while giving her legitimate reasons to interact with her targets in the coming weeks. She arrived at Conference Room B precisely on time, setting up her materials with efficient movements. Mitchell and his three colleagues entered minutes later, along with two other new officers Kate hadn't yet encountered. Mitchell's expression showed immediate recognition and disappointment. Gentlemen, Kate began professionally, I'm Petty Officer Blackwood from Logistics. I'll be providing an overview of our supply chain procedures and how they impact your operational readiness. She proceeded with her presentation, explaining procurement timelines, priority classifications, and expedited request protocols. Throughout, she maintained the demeanor of a competent but unremarkable logistics specialist, knowledgeable in her field but nothing that would suggest capabilities beyond her assigned role. Mitchell interrupted several times with questions that seemed designed to challenge her expertise rather than seek information. Kate handled each with calm professionalism, neither backing down nor revealing irritation. With respect, sir, she responded to one particularly condescending question. The protocol exists because combat effectiveness depends on having the right equipment at the right time. The forms ensure nothing falls through the cracks. Mitchell leaned back, clearly unimpressed. In my experience, petty officer bureaucracy rarely improves combat effectiveness. Perhaps not directly, sir, Kate acknowledged, but I've processed enough emergency requisitions to know that proper planning prevents emergency situations in the first place. A flicker of surprise crossed Mitchell's face at her measured response. From the corner of her eye, Kate noticed Eric Adams nodding slightly in agreement. As the presentation concluded, Kate distributed her contact information. If you have questions about expediting critical supplies, please don't hesitate to reach out. My team is here to support your operational needs. Mitchell gathered his materials with barely concealed disdain. As the officers filed out, Adams lingered behind. Thank you for the presentation, Petty Officer, he said quietly. Some of us actually appreciate understanding the systems we depend on. Just doing my job, sir, Kate replied with a polite nod. Adams hesitated, then added, I apologize for Lieutenant Mitchell's tone. He can be traditional in his views. No apology necessary, sir. I've been in the Navy long enough to encounter all types. Adams nodded and left. Kate remained in the conference room organizing her materials while processing this interaction. Adams had separated himself from Mitchell's attitude, whether from genuine respect or as part of a more complex deception remained to be seen. That evening, Kate sent her daily report through secure channels detailing her observations and preliminary assessments. The response directed her to maintain her current approach while preparing for escalated monitoring. 5 days passed with Kate establishing her routine interactions with the new officers. She maintained her cover perfectly, never revealing skills or knowledge beyond her logistics role. Mitchell continued his dismissive attitude while Chen remained watchful but distant. Thompson seemed largely uninterested in logistics matters, focusing instead on operational assignments. Adams maintained professional courtesy that stood in contrast to Mitchell's behavior. On the 6th day, everything changed. Kate entered the base mess hall at 0700 earlier than her usual routine. The hall buzzed with morning activity, hundreds of personnel getting breakfast before their shifts. She selected her meal and found a table in the corner, positioning herself with clear sight lines to all entrances and exits. As she ate, she observed Mitchell, Chen, Thompson, and Adams enter and join the breakfast line. Their conversation appeared animated, with Mitchell gesturing emphatically about something. Occasionally, their glances drifted toward her table. Kate continued eating, maintaining her unassuming demeanor while remaining acutely aware of their attention. When they finished collecting their food, Mitchell led the group directly toward her table. Their intent was clear from their formation. They were surrounding her, an unconscious tactical approach that suggested coordinated action. Mitchell placed his tray directly across from her. "Good morning, Petty Officer Blackwood. Mind if we join you?" The mess hall quieted slightly as nearby personnel sensed the developing tension. Kate looked up with mild surprise as if she hadn't noticed their approach. "Not at all, sir," she replied calmly. Mitchell sat down flanked by Chen and Thompson. Adams hesitated before taking the fourth position, effectively surrounding Kate at her table. "We've been discussing something interesting." Mitchell began, his tone carrying an unmistakable edge. "The role of women in combat positions." Kate took another bite of her breakfast, chewing deliberately before responding. "An ongoing conversation in military circles, sir." "Indeed," Mitchell leaned forward. "My personal view is that combat effectiveness should never be compromised for social engineering. Some roles simply require physical capabilities that most women don't possess." Around them, the mess hall grew quieter as more personnel tuned into the conversation. Kate remained outwardly calm, though her training had already shifted her awareness to heightened alert. She noted exit paths, potential obstacles, and the positioning of each man around her table. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion, sir," she replied evenly. Chen smirked. "That's a diplomatic response." "Just a realistic one, sir," Kate said. "I'm a logistics officer. Combat roles aren't my area of expertise." "See, that's appropriate," Mitchell continued, his voice growing louder. "Knowing your place in the organization. Supporting roles are vital, but they're different from combat positions." Thompson leaned in from Kate's left. "What Lieutenant Mitchell is saying is that there's a natural order to things. Men are built for certain roles, women for others." The mess hall had grown noticeably quieter. Nearby tables of sailors watched the interaction with varying expressions, some uncomfortable, others curious, a few looking ready to intervene if necessary. "I understand your perspective, sir," Kate responded, her voice remaining professional despite the increasingly hostile tone. "Is there something specific about logistics support I can help you with this morning?" Mitchell's expression hardened. "I think you're missing the point, Petty Officer. Some of us believe the standards of this institution are being compromised to accommodate political agendas." "With respect, sir," Kate replied, "I'm trying to enjoy my breakfast before my shift. Perhaps this discussion would be better suited to another time and place." "Are we making you uncomfortable?" Mitchell pressed, leaning further across the table. "Because discomfort is part of military life. In combat situations, there's no room for sensitivity." Kate set down her fork and looked directly at Mitchell. "Sir, I've completed my breakfast and need to report for duty. Request permission to be excused." "We're not finished with this conversation," Mitchell said, his hand moving to rest on the table edge near Kate's tray. The gesture wasn't explicitly threatening, but it established physical dominance of the space. Several senior officers at nearby tables were now watching intently. The situation was escalating beyond a simple conversation into potential harassment. Kate had seconds to decide her approach, continue in her cover role as a logistics officer, who would likely retreat from this confrontation, or Mitchell's hands shifted, his fingers now touching the edge of Kate's tray. "I think you need to understand the reality of chain of command, Petty Officer. When superior officers engage you in conversation, you don't simply dismiss." His hand made contact with her wrist. In that moment, 7 years of SEAL training and dozens of combat operations condensed into pure instinct. Kate's expression changed imperceptibly as her body prepared for what needed to happen next. The next 45 seconds would change everything. The moment Mitchell's fingers made contact with Kate's wrist, time seemed to slow. Years of training crystallized into pure reflex. Her mind registered multiple factors simultaneously. 4 opponents, their positions around the table, distance to exits, potential witnesses, and the exact amount of force needed enough to neutralize without causing permanent injury. Mitchell's grip tightened on her wrist. Kate's eyes met his, a flash of something dangerous passing through them that made him hesitate for a fraction of a second. That hesitation was all she needed. Kate executed a perfect joint manipulation, twisting her wrist in a way that reversed the pressure against Mitchell's thumb. The move was so swift and precise that Mitchell had no time to resist before he found himself off balance, his arm locked in an awkward position that sent shooting pain through his elbow and shoulder. "What the—" Mitchell gasped as Kate used his compromised position to pull him forward across the table, his face now pressed against the surface. Chen reacted first, lunging from her left. Without releasing Mitchell, Kate delivered a precise strike to Chen's solar plexus, a textbook technique taught in advanced close-quarters combat. The blow wasn't powerful enough to cause internal damage, but landed with perfect accuracy on the nerve cluster, temporarily paralyzing his diaphragm. Chen's eyes widened in shock as he struggled to breathe, collapsing back into his seat. Thompson was already moving to grab her from behind. Kate sensed his approach and executed a flawless leg sweep while simultaneously releasing Mitchell and pivoting. Thompson found himself suddenly airborne before crashing onto the mess hall floor, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. Adams, who had been the most reluctant participant, raised his hands in surrender. "Wait, stop," he began, but Kate was already in motion. She applied minimal pressure to a specific point on his neck, enough to make him freeze without causing unconsciousness. The entire sequence from Mitchell's hand touching her wrist to all four officers being neutralized took exactly 45 seconds. The mess hall fell into absolute silence. Hundreds of sailors and officers sat frozen in disbelief. They had just witnessed a logistics petty officer take down four larger, presumably better-trained officers with moves that clearly came from advanced special operations training. Captain James Harris, a 20-year SEAL veteran who happened to be eating breakfast 3 tables away, recognized the techniques immediately. The precise joint manipulations, the targeted nerve strikes, the economy of movement, these weren't random self-defense moves. This was how SEALs were trained to neutralize multiple opponents while minimizing permanent damage. But that was impossible. There were no female SEALs. Harris rose from his table and approached slowly, his experienced eyes assessing Kate with new understanding and growing concern. Before he could speak, the doors to the mess hall burst open. Commander Donovan strode in, flanked by 2 senior officers. "Attention on deck," someone called, and those not involved in the altercation snapped to attention. Donovan surveyed the scene quickly. Mitchell still pressed against the table, Chen gasping for breath, Thompson on the floor, and Adams frozen in place. His eyes locked with Kate's, communicating volumes in a single glance. "Petty Officer Blackwood, come with me," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "Lieutenant Wallace, Lieutenant Commander Johnson, please escort these 4 officers to the medical facility for evaluation." Kate released Adams and stepped away from the table, her movements once again those of a standard naval petty officer rather than a highly trained operative. She followed Donovan from the mess hall without comment, aware that hundreds of eyes tracked her exit. Behind them, the whispers had already begun. As they walked briskly across the base, Donovan kept his voice low. "A sailor was filming the entire incident on his phone. It's already being uploaded to social media." Kate maintained her composure, though internally she processed the implications. "Containment options." "Limited," Donovan replied grimly. "We're implementing damage control protocols. But once something hits the internet..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They entered a secure conference room in the administration building where Admiral Barnes was waiting, his expression grave as he ended a phone call. "It's gone viral already, Haya," he informed them. 300,000 views and climbing. Every major news network is picking it up. "How much did the video show?" Kate asked, her tactical mind immediately assessing the exposure parameters. "Everything," Barnes replied, "from the confrontation to the takedown. The camera angle was perfect, captured all 45 seconds in detail." "The Pentagon is convening an emergency session," Donovan added. "The existence of female SEALs has significant policy and security implications." Kate took a seat, her posture still perfect despite the chaos unfolding around her. "What about the ongoing investigation? The Russian network is still active." "That's now a secondary concern," Barnes said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Your cover is blown. We need to address the public revelation before anything else." The secure phone on the conference table rang. Barnes answered, listened briefly, then enabled the speakerphone. "You're on with Admiral Barnes, Commander Donovan, and Petty Officer Blackwood." "This is Secretary of Defense Marshall," came an authoritative voice. "I've reviewed the initial reports and seen the video. We have approximately 2 hours before I need to make a public statement. I need options." Donovan leaned toward the phone. "Mr. Secretary, we have 3 potential approaches. First, we could deny any special program exists and claim Petty Officer Blackwood simply has exceptional self-defense training. Second, we could acknowledge a limited pilot program without providing specifics. Third, we could use this as an opportunity to fully disclose the female SEAL program with appropriate safeguards for operational security. The secretary was silent for a moment. The first option isn't viable. The video clearly shows advanced combat techniques consistent with special operations training. The skills displayed go well beyond standard self-defense. The second option presents verification challenges, Barnes added. Partial disclosure will only fuel speculation and potentially compromise other operators. Which leaves us with option 3, the secretary concluded. Admiral Barnes prepare a full briefing on the program history objectives, success metrics. Commander Donovan draft talking points for my statement. Petty Officer Blackwood, he paused. You've served your country with distinction in shadows. Now I'm asking you to serve in the spotlight. Are you prepared for that? Kate's training had never covered this scenario. Every mission, every operation had emphasized anonymity and deniability. Now she was being asked to become the public face of a classified program. I'll do whatever serves the mission, Mr. Secretary, she replied professionally. Good. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. That's all for now. The line went dead. Donovan turned to Kate, concern evident in his weathered features. This changes everything, Catherine. Not just for you, but for the entire program. What about the other one? Kate asked, thinking of the 2 other women who had completed SEAL training with Arn. Their identities remain secure for now, Barnes assured her. They're both deployed on operations with sufficient cover. We'll maintain their anonymity. Kate nodded, relieved that at least that aspect of security remained intact. And the Russian operation, Donovan's expression darkened. That's the most immediate concern. If your identity is compromised, the entire investigation is at risk. Frost will know we're onto his network. Or, Kate suggested, her tactical mind shifting to new possibilities. This creates an opportunity. My cover as a covert operative is blown, but that could make me a more valuable target. The attention might draw them out. Barnes and Donovan exchanged thoughtful glances. A classic counterintelligence reversal, Barnes noted. Using public exposure as operational cover. Risky but potentially effective. We'll need to coordinate with counterintelligence, Donovan said. Develop a new approach that leverages this situation. The door opened and a communications officer entered with a tablet. Sirs, you need to see this. The video has reached 5 million views. Major networks are running it as breaking news. They gathered around the tablet watching as CNN displayed the footage with the headline, Female Navy SEAL, Petty Officer takes down 4 male officers in 45 seconds. The anchor's voice played over the footage. What you're witnessing may be the first public evidence of women serving in the Navy SEALs, long considered one of the last all-male bastions in the military. The Pentagon has yet to comment on this remarkable video showing a female petty officer using what experts identify as advanced special operations combat techniques. Barnes muted the tablet. It's moving even faster than we anticipated. We need to get ahead of this. In the medical facility across the base, Mitchell, Chen, Thompson, and Adams were being examined by Navy medical personnel. Mitchell's shoulder had sustained minor strain. Chen was still experiencing residual chest discomfort. Thompson had bruising from his fall, and Adams had recovered completely from the nerve pressure technique. I want that woman charged with assault, Mitchell demanded, wincing as the doctor manipulated his shoulder. Lieutenant, I'd advise against pursuing that course of action, the medical officer replied calmly. The video clearly shows you initiating physical contact. Furthermore, the techniques used against you are consistent with appropriate defensive response to perceived threat. Perceived threat, Mitchell scoffed. We were having a conversation. A conversation where 4 officers surrounded and intimidated a subordinate, Adams interjected quietly. Sir, with respect, we were in the wrong. Mitchell glared at Adams. Whose side are you on, Ensign? The side of truth, sir, Adams replied evenly. What happened in that mess hall wasn't right, and we all know it. Chen had remained unusually quiet since the incident, his expression thoughtful rather than angry. Those weren't standard self-defense moves, he said finally. That was special operations training. Tier 1 level. Thompson nodded in agreement, rubbing his bruised back. Nobody moves like that without years of intensive training, certainly not a logistics officer. Their conversation was interrupted as Commander Johnson entered the examination room. Gentlemen, once the medical staff clears you, you're to report to Admiral Barnes's office immediately. This incident has escalated to the highest levels. Sir, Adams ventured, may I ask what's happening with Petty Officer Blackwood? That information is above your clearance level, Ensign, Johnson replied curtly before leaving. The four officers exchanged glances, each processing the implications differently. For Mitchell, it was humiliation and anger. For Chen, intense curiosity. For Thompson, a reassessment of his assumptions. And for Adams, a growing admiration. Back in the secure conference room, Kate received a message from Donovan. She was to prepare for a press conference at the Pentagon within 4 hours. Transportation was being arranged to fly her to Washington immediately. This isn't how I imagined my cover would be blown, Kate said, allowing a rare moment of personal reflection. Donovan placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. You've spent years training for unexpected scenarios, Catherine. Consider this another mission, different parameters. Same objective, serve your country effectively. What about our Russian problem? Kate asked, refocusing on the operational threat. We're developing a new approach, Barnes said. Intelligence suggests Jason Chen may be our primary person of interest. His reaction to your takedown was notably different from the others, analytical rather than emotional. He was studying my techniques, Kate confirmed. Most people in that situation react with surprise or fear. He was cataloging and assessing. We've authorized surveillance on all four officers, Donovan added. If Chen is connected to Frost's network, his communications will likely spike after this incident. A junior officer entered with a secure tablet. Petty Officer Blackwood, your transport to Washington is ready. And sir, he addressed Barnes, we've detected unusual communication patterns from Lieutenant Mitchell's quarters. Multiple encrypted messages sent within the last 30 minutes. Kate and Donovan exchanged surprised glances. Mitchell, not Chen, Kate questioned. Intelligence is often misdirection, Donovan reminded her. Mitchell's obvious hostility makes him the perfect cover for operational activities. His behavior creates natural distance that prevents closer scrutiny. Classic Frost technique, Barnes agreed. He trained his operatives to cultivate off-putting personas during the Cold War. The most disliked person in the room rarely faces suspicion of being a spy. People avoid them too much to notice patterns. Kate processed this new information, reassessing her interactions with Mitchell. His aggressive stance toward women in combat roles, his military family background, his apparent arrogance, all could be carefully constructed cover. We need to adjust our approach, she said, her tactical mind already developing alternatives. If Mitchell is our target, my exposure creates both risk and opportunity. Agreed, Donovan replied. But first we need to handle the public disclosure. Once that's stabilized, we can refocus on the counterintelligence operation. As Kate prepared to leave for Washington, she received one final briefing from Barnes and Donovan. The Secretary of Defense would publicly acknowledge the existence of female SEALs as part of a classified pilot program. Kate would be identified as one of these pioneers, but without operational details. The other female SEALs would remain anonymous for security reasons. Remember your training, Donovan advised as they walked toward the waiting helicopter. Reveal nothing about ongoing operations or specific capabilities. Focus on the broader mission and values of the program. Kate nodded mentally, preparing for what would likely be the most challenging mission of her career. Not a covert operation in hostile territory, but facing the world's media as the first publicly acknowledged female Navy SEAL. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Kate toward Washington in a very different kind of battlefield. 4 hours later, Kate stood backstage at the Pentagon briefing room, dressed in her service uniform, with appropriate ribbons and insignia. Her appearance had been carefully calibrated, professional and military, neither downplaying nor overemphasizing her gender. Secretary of Defense Marshall approached, extending his hand. Petty Officer Blackwood, the nation owes you a debt of gratitude not just for your service in operations abroad, but for handling this situation with such professionalism. Thank you, sir, Kate replied. I'm prepared for the briefing. Just be authentic, the secretary advised. The American people respect honesty and dedication to duty. Questions about classified operations or details of your training can be deferred to me. The press briefing began with the secretary making a prepared statement confirming the existence of what he termed an elite special operations assessment program that had included a small number of female candidates. He emphasized that all participants had met the same rigorous standards required of their male counterparts, with no modifications or accommodations. Today I'm introducing Petty Officer Catherine Blackwood, who has served her country with distinction in multiple operations, the Secretary announced. She represents the highest standards of our armed forces regardless of gender. Kate stepped to the podium facing a room filled with reporters and flashing cameras. The world was watching as she prepared to speak. "Good afternoon," she began, her poise steady and professional. "I joined the Navy to serve my country like generations of Americans before me. When the opportunity arose to attempt SEAL qualification training, I viewed it as another way to serve to the best of my abilities." A reporter immediately raised his hand. "Petty Officer Blackwood, the video shows you neutralizing 4 larger male officers in 45 seconds. How were you able to do that?" "The Navy provides exceptional training to those who qualify for specialized programs," Kate replied carefully. "The techniques you observed are standard for certain close-quarters combat situations. Any properly trained operator, regardless of gender, can execute them effectively." Another reporter called out, "Were standards lowered to allow women into the SEALs?" "No," Kate answered firmly. "The standards remained identical. The training I completed was exactly the same as for male candidates, same physical requirements, same tactical challenges, same expectations. Many candidates, both men and women, don't complete the training. Those who do have proven they meet the established operational requirements." The questions continued for nearly 40 minutes, with Kate navigating the complex terrain between transparency and operational security. She acknowledged her service without revealing classified details, emphasized capability without arrogance, and consistently redirected the focus from herself to the mission and values of the Naval Special Warfare community. As the press conference concluded, the Secretary made a final statement. "Petty Officer Blackwood will be temporarily assigned to a public affairs role while we assess the broader implications of today's revelations. Thank you all for your time." Behind the scenes, a different kind of operation was unfolding. Intelligence analysts were monitoring communications to and from Norfolk Naval Station, particularly those involving Mitchell Chen and their potential contacts. The revelation of a female SEAL had created exactly the kind of disruption that might force the Russian network to make mistakes. Back at Norfolk, Admiral Barnes convened a private meeting with Mitchell, Chen, Thompson, and Adams. The atmosphere was tense as they entered his office. "Gentlemen, you've all signed non-disclosure agreements as part of your security clearance," Barnes began without preamble. "Today's events fall squarely under those agreements. You are not to discuss what occurred with anyone outside this room. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," they responded in unison. "Lieutenant Mitchell," Barnes continued, fixing the officer with a stern gaze, "your behavior in the mess hall was unbecoming an officer. Under normal circumstances, I would be considering disciplinary action." Mitchell's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "However," Barnes continued, "given the sensitive nature of the situation, we're handling this internally. Consider this your only warning." "Sir," Mitchell finally spoke, his voice controlled, "I want to formally apologize for my conduct. I allowed personal biases to affect my professional behavior." Barnes studied him carefully, noting the perfectly appropriate response that somehow lacked genuine contrition. "Apology noted, Lieutenant." Admiral Chen interjected, "May I ask if the female SEAL program will be expanded now that it's public?" Barnes turned to Chen, watching for any unusual interest behind the question. "That's a policy matter for the Pentagon ensign, not something I can speculate on." Sir Adams spoke up. "Will Petty Officer Blackwood be returning to Norfolk?" "That remains to be determined," Barnes replied. "For now, all of you are to resume your regular duties and avoid any discussion of today's events." Dismissed. As the 4 officers left, Barnes activated a secure communication channel to Donovan in Washington. They responded as expected. Mitchell's apology seemed rehearsed. Chen asked about program expansion, possibly fishing for intelligence value. Thompson remained quiet. Adams showed concern for Blackwood. "Continue surveillance on all 4, Donovan instructed. "Particularly monitor any attempts at secure communications. If Mitchell is our man, he'll need to report this development to his handlers." In her Pentagon office, Kate reviewed the media coverage of her press conference. Every major news outlet was running the story with headlines ranging from "Breaking Barriers, First Female SEAL Revealed" to 45 seconds that changed military history. Social media was exploding with both support and criticism, the latter predominantly questioning whether standards had truly remained equal. A secure message arrived from Donovan. Mitchell attempted encrypted communication post-meeting. Transmission intercepted but heavily encoded. Analysis underway. Potential breakthrough. Kate's training immediately shifted her focus from the media storm to the operational threat. If Mitchell was indeed Frost's agent, the exposure of a female SEAL program would represent significant intelligence value, not just for the capabilities it revealed, but for the political and strategic implications. She drafted a response. Recommend accelerated counterintelligence operation. My public exposure creates opportunity for controlled information flow. The reply came within minutes. Agreed, new operational parameters being developed. Secretary approves transition from defensive to offensive posture. Stand by for brief. Kate closed the media reports and cleared her mind, preparing for what would likely be a complex counter-espionage operation, using her new public profile as operational cover. The revelation that had seemed catastrophic hours ago was being transformed into a strategic advantage, exactly the kind of adaptation that special operations training emphasized. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. A Pentagon aide entered with a secure tablet. Petty Officer priority message from Norfolk. We've detected unusual network activity targeting your personnel file and operational history. Someone's trying to access classified data about your past deployments. Kate took the tablet, reviewing the technical details of the attempted breach. Origin point. Initial trace suggests Norfolk Naval Station, the aide replied, but it's being routed through multiple proxy servers. Cybersecurity is still working to identify the source. Inform Commander Donovan immediately. Kate instructed, her mind already processing the implications. The Russian network was accelerating its operations, likely in response to her public exposure. They were seeking operational details that could compromise past missions or identify other female SEALs. Within the hour, Kate was in the Pentagon's Secure Operations Center, joining a video conference with Donovan Barnes and the counterintelligence team. Technical analysts had traced the attempted breach to a sophisticated operation using Norfolk's systems as a launch point. The attack signature matches known Russian military intelligence methodologies, the lead analyst explained. They're specifically targeting mission data from Operation Kingfisher 3 years ago. Kate immediately recognized the significance. Operation Kingfisher had involved all 3 female SEALs in a complex extraction mission in Eastern Europe. If that data were compromised, it could potentially expose the identities of the other operators. We need to move to active countermeasures, Donovan stated firmly. The defensive approach is no longer sufficient. Agreed, Barnes nodded. What's the recommendation? The counterintelligence director spoke up. We propose a honeypot operation. Create a controlled data repository with sanitized but convincing operational details. Make it appear vulnerable to specific access methods. When they attempt to extract the data, we'll be able to trace the complete network. And Petty Officer Blackwood? Donovan asked. She becomes the focal point, the director explained. Her public profile makes her the perfect bait. We make it appear that her personal devices contain access credentials to the restricted data credentials that would be accessible to someone in close physical proximity. Kate immediately understood the strategy. You want me back at Norfolk carrying the devices that appear to contain security keys. Precisely, the director confirmed. You'll return as part of your new public affairs role, ostensibly to gather personal items and conduct exit interviews. The real purpose will be to draw out our target. Mitchell will make his move, Donovan predicted. He won't be able to resist such an opportunity. Or Chen, Barnes reminded them, we still can't rule him out completely. What about Thompson and Adams? Kate asked. Lower probability, the intelligence analyst replied. But we're monitoring all 4. Thompson's background check is clean, and Adams has no suspicious contacts or financial anomalies. The plan was approved at the highest levels. Kate would return to Norfolk the following day carrying specially prepared devices designed to appear vulnerable while actually serving as sophisticated tracking and monitoring tools. Her public story would be that she was transitioning to her new role and needed to complete administrative procedures at her former posting. That evening, Kate received a personal visit from Donovan in her temporary Pentagon quarters. You understand the risks of this operation, he said, his concern evident. Completely, Kate affirmed. If Mitchell or Chen is working for Frost, they'll see this as their best opportunity to access classified information. They'll make a move. And when they do, Donovan continued, we'll have them, but Frost is exceptionally dangerous, Catherine. He's evaded capture for decades. His operatives are trained to take extreme measures when compromised. Kate met his gaze steadily. So am I. Donovan nodded, then retrieved a small box from his pocket. This belonged to Sarah, he said quietly, opening it to reveal a simple silver pendant. She wore it on every training and exercise, said it brought her focus. I'd like you to have it. Kate recognized the significance of the gesture. Donovan was not merely her commander or mentor. He had become family. She accepted the pendant with appropriate gravity. I'll wear it with honor, sir. Just come back safely, Donovan replied. That's an order. The following morning, Kate departed Washington aboard a military transport returning to Norfolk as America's most famous Navy SEAL. News cameras captured her arrival, the media having been tipped off as part of the operation's cover. She gave brief, appropriate comments about returning to complete her transfer and gather personal effects. What the cameras didn't show were the multiple layers of security and surveillance now in place around her. Every electronic device she carried contained sophisticated monitoring technology. Every area she would visit at Norfolk had been equipped with advanced surveillance. A reaction team of special operators was on standby, disguised as regular base personnel. As Kate entered the administrative building at Norfolk, she was greeted with a mixture of reactions from personnel, some openly admiring, others uncertain how to interact with her new public status. She maintained professional composure throughout, playing her role perfectly while remaining hyper-aware of her surroundings. Lieutenant Commander Simmons, her former supervisor in the logistics department, welcomed her with genuine warmth. The whole department is proud of you, Blackwood, though I have to admit I never suspected a thing. That was the idea, sir, Kate replied with a small smile. I appreciate your understanding. Your office is just as you left it, Simmons continued. Take whatever time you need. And for what it's worth, those 4 officers got exactly what they deserved. Kate spent the next hour collecting personal items from her office, deliberately leaving her secure tablet on the desk while she moved between rooms. The device appeared to be locked, but a sophisticated user could identify potential access vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that had been carefully engineered as part of the operation. At 1400 hours, Kate visited the personnel department to complete transfer paperwork. As expected, Mitchell appeared in the same area, ostensibly filing routine reports. Their eyes met briefly, his expression unreadable. Lieutenant Mitchell, Kate acknowledged professionally. Petty Officer Blackwood, he responded with equal formality. Or should I say Petty Officer SEAL Blackwood? Just Blackwood is fine, sir, she replied evenly. Mitchell studied her for a moment. I want to apologize for my behavior in the mess hall. It was unprofessional and inappropriate. Apology accepted, sir, Kate said, noting that his words seemed more calculated than genuinely contrite. Quite a career change you're making, Mitchell continued, from covert operations to public affairs. I go where the Navy needs me, sir, Kate replied, revealing nothing. Mitchell nodded slowly. Well, good luck with your new assignment. He turned to leave, then added, I imagine there's quite a bit of administrative work involved in transitioning from a classified program. Standard procedures, sir, Kate said, deliberately vague. As Mitchell walked away, Kate's earpiece delivered a message from the surveillance team. Subject showing elevated heart rate and perspiration, definite stress indicators during the interaction. Kate returned to her office to find Chen waiting outside her door. His approach was markedly different from Mitchell's open curiosity rather than veiled probing. Petty Officer Blackwood, he greeted her. I wanted to apologize for my part in the mess hall incident. I was following Lieutenant Mitchell's lead, which was no excuse. Thank you, Ensign, Kate acknowledged, assessing his sincerity. Is there something else I can help you with? Chen hesitated, then asked, the techniques you used, that was Krav Maga combined with some Filipino martial art, wasn't it? The precision was incredible. Kate offered a professional smile. I'm not authorized to discuss specific training methodologies, Ensign. Of course, understood, Chen replied quickly. His eyes briefly flicked toward her tablet on the desk before returning to her face. I just wanted to say what you've accomplished is inspiring. Breaking barriers like that takes extraordinary commitment. I appreciate that, Kate said, maintaining her cover while noting his momentary interest in her device. If you'll excuse me, I have several more departments to visit before my transport leaves. After Chen departed, the surveillance team reported, Subject Chen showed technical interest in your devices, scanning patterns consistent with someone assessing electronic vulnerabilities. The trap was baited. Now they waited to see which target would make the first move. Later that afternoon, Kate deliberately left her tablet in her office while attending a meeting with Admiral Barnes. The device was under constant surveillance, its cameras and microphones activated to record any attempted access. At 16:22 hours, the security team observed Mitchell approaching Kate's office. He entered without knocking, quickly closing the door behind him. The hidden cameras captured his movements as he approached her desk, removed what appeared to be a specialized data transfer device from his pocket, and connected it to her tablet. Target engaged, the surveillance coordinator reported. Mitchell is attempting to bypass security protocols on the target device. For 3 minutes, Mitchell worked on the tablet, his expression concentrated as he executed what appeared to be sophisticated hacking procedures well beyond the knowledge base of a standard naval officer. The counterintelligence team tracked the data pathways as Mitchell's device attempted to extract information. The honeypot was working perfectly, allowing controlled access to the falsified data repository while mapping the command and control network receiving the transmission. We're getting connection patterns, the cyber team reported, tracing back through multiple relays. This is definitely a professional intelligence operation. Mitchell disconnected his device and carefully restored the tablet to its original position. He performed a quick check of the office before slipping out his movements, betraying professional tradecraft rather than opportunistic snooping. Do we take him now? The tactical team leader asked over the secure channel. Negative, came Donovan's voice. Let him transmit the data. We need to trace the complete network. Kate returned to her office 30 minutes later, behaving as if nothing had happened. She collected her tablet, continuing her administrative tasks, while the counterintelligence operation unfolded behind the scenes. By 1900 hours, the cyber team had traced the data transmission to a sophisticated relay system that eventually connected to a server in Berlin, a known transit point for Russian intelligence communications. Mitchell had transmitted the honeypot data, which contained carefully crafted misinformation about the female SEAL program, along with tracking markers that would help identify anyone who accessed it. Kate received her final briefing from Admiral Barnes before departing Norfolk. The operation is proceeding as planned. Mitchell took the bait and we're tracking the data flow. Return to Washington as scheduled. We'll handle the next phase here. Sir, Kate questioned, what about the actual operational threat? The targeting systems are still vulnerable. Barnes nodded approvingly. Always focused on the mission Blackwood. We've implemented enhanced security protocols for the targeting systems based on your initial intelligence. The immediate threat has been contained. As Kate prepared to board her transport back to Washington, her secure phone vibrated with an unexpected message. Your room has been compromised. Do not return to quarters. Proceed directly to extraction point. Frost knows. The message was authenticated with Donovan's emergency code. Something had gone wrong. The carefully orchestrated counterintelligence operation had triggered a response they hadn't anticipated. Instead of boarding her scheduled transport, Kate followed her emergency protocols, moving quickly but calmly toward the alternative extraction point designated in her briefing. As she rounded the corner of the hangar, she spotted Adams waiting near the secondary transport aircraft. Petty Officer Blackwood, he called out, approaching her. I wanted to catch you before you left. Kate's training immediately heightened her awareness. Adams's presence at the extraction point was not part of the plan. She maintained her cover while subtly shifting to a defensive posture. Ensign Adams, she acknowledged. What can I do for you? I wanted to warn you, Adams said urgently, his voice low. Mitchell isn't working alone. There's someone else, someone higher ranking involved in whatever he's doing. Kate studied him carefully, assessing whether this was genuine information or part of a more complex trap. What makes you say that? I overheard a conversation, Adams explained. Mitchell was talking to someone on an encrypted line mentioning the Phoenix operation and how she'll lead us to the others. I think he was talking about you. Phoenix was Kate's classified operational codename information that wasn't public and shouldn't have been known to Mitchell or Adams. Either Adams was trying to gain her trust with insider knowledge, or there was a serious security breach. I appreciate the information, Ensign, Kate replied neutrally. I'll make sure the appropriate authorities are notified. Adams nodded, seemingly satisfied with her response. Be careful, petty officer. Whatever's happening goes deeper than anyone's saying. He turned and walked away, disappearing around the hangar. Kate immediately activated her emergency communication channel. Phoenix to control, secondary contact made with Adams. He referenced classified designation Phoenix. Security compromise confirmed, awaiting instructions. Donovan's voice came through clearly. Confirmed breach at multiple levels. Extraction aircraft is secure. Board immediately. We have a situation developing in Washington. As Kate boarded the aircraft, her mind processed the implications. Adams's warning, Mitchell's sophisticated technical skills. The reference to her codename, the Russian operation, was more extensive than they had initially assessed. And somewhere pulling the strings was Frost, the legendary operative who had eluded capture for decades. The aircraft lifted off from Norfolk as night fell, carrying Kate toward Washington in the next phase of what had become a far more dangerous game than anyone had anticipated. The 45 seconds in the mess hall had exposed more than her identity. They had triggered a counterintelligence crisis that threatened both her mission and potentially the other female SEALs still operating in secret. As the lights of Norfolk receded behind her, Kate touched the silver pendant Donovan had given her. Whatever challenges awaited in Washington, she would face them with the same precision and determination she had demonstrated in those 45 seconds that changed everything. The military transport touched down at Andrews Air Force Base under cover of darkness. Kate stepped onto the tarmac to find Commander Donovan waiting beside an unmarked SUV, his expression grave in the dim light of the airfield. The situation has escalated, he said without preamble as they climbed into the vehicle. Frost isn't just after technology specs anymore. He's hunting your teammates. Kate absorbed this information with the calm focus of a veteran operator. The other female SEALs? Exactly. The intelligence we gathered from Mitchell's data transfer reveals a more complex objective than we initially assessed. The targeting system was just a secondary goal. Their primary mission is to identify and compromise all female SEAL operators. The SUV moved swiftly through the security checkpoints, heading not toward the Pentagon but to a secure facility in Northern Virginia. As they drove, Donovan briefed Kate on developments that had unfolded while she was in the air. We've confirmed Mitchell is Frost's primary operative at Norfolk, but he's not alone. The network is more extensive than we anticipated. We've identified at least 3 other assets in key positions, including one at the Pentagon with access to personnel files. What about Adams? Kate asked, recalling their strange encounter at Norfolk. That's where it gets complicated, Donovan replied. Preliminary analysis suggests he may actually be working for us. Counterintelligence recruited him 3 months ago based on suspicions about Mitchell. His warning to you wasn't authorized, but it appears genuine. Kate processed this revelation. So we have our own operation running parallel to Frost's. Do we know who's controlling Adams? That's still unclear. There are elements within our intelligence community that operate with significant autonomy. What matters now is that Frost has accelerated his timeline. The revelation of your identity created both a problem and an opportunity for him. He wants to expose the entire program, Kate concluded, compromise all female special operators to damage operational capabilities and create political fallout. Precisely, Donovan confirmed as they arrived at a nondescript office building. We've established a secure operations center here away from potential compromise channels at the Pentagon. Inside, they found Admiral Barnes and a team of intelligence analysts working from a makeshift command center. Multiple screens displayed data flows, surveillance footage, and intelligence reports. Barnes looked up as they entered, nodding grimly. Blackwood, good to have you back. The situation is fluid. We've extracted Captain Rivera from her operation in Eastern Europe as a precaution, but Lieutenant Commander Wilson is deep cover in Asia. Extraction would compromise an ongoing, critical mission. Kate knew both women by their real names, the only other female operators who had completed SEAL training with her. Jessica Rivera and Michelle Wilson were not just colleagues, but friends who had endured the brutal selection process together. Now all 3 were at risk. What's our approach? Kate asked immediately, focusing on the operational challenge rather than the personal implications. Counteroffensive, Barnes replied, gesturing toward the central display. Mitchell believes he successfully extracted valuable intelligence from your tablet. The tracking markers in that data are now providing us unprecedented insight into Frost's network. But we've also fed him specific misinformation that will draw attention away from Wilson's operation while we neutralize the immediate threat. A senior intelligence analyst stepped forward. We've identified a pattern in the communication network. All intelligence is being funneled to a single collection point, a hotel in Georgetown, where we believe Frost himself is coordinating the operation. After 30 years, we might finally have him, Donovan said, a hint of personal vindication in his voice. If it's really him, Kate cautioned, Frost has a reputation for creating elaborate misdirections, which is why we need absolute confirmation before we move, Barnes agreed. That's where you come in, Blackwood. The plan they outlined was audacious but logical. Kate would appear to be cooperating with a damage control strategy, making a series of carefully orchestrated public appearances that would serve as cover for surveillance operations. Each appearance would be designed to flush out Frost's operatives while gradually tightening the net around the Georgetown location. The media attention on you is actually our greatest asset now, the public affairs officer explained. We'll use it to dictate where Frost's people must position themselves if they want to maintain surveillance on you. Meanwhile, Donovan continued, we'll be running a parallel operation to extract the remaining intelligence assets from Norfolk. Mitchell doesn't know we're onto him yet. We need to keep it that way until we're ready to roll up the entire network. Kate studied the operational timeline on the main screen. When do we move on the Georgetown location? 48 hours, Barnes replied. We need to confirm Frost's presence and ensure we've identified all key members of his network before striking. The first phase of the operation began the following morning. Kate made an appearance at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, ostensibly to speak to female midshipmen about leadership opportunities. The carefully choreographed event received extensive media coverage, with security teams monitoring all attendees and surrounding areas for surveillance activity. As expected, they identified 2 Russian operatives posing as journalists, their movements and communications patterns matching known intelligence tradecraft. Rather than apprehending them immediately, the counterintelligence team tracked them back to a safe house in Baltimore, adding another piece to the puzzle of Frost's network. Throughout the day, Kate maintained her public persona perfectly professional, modest about her achievements, focused on service rather than personal recognition. Behind this calm exterior, her mind constantly processed the operational dynamics unfolding around her, identifying potential threats and evaluating each interaction for intelligence value. During a brief private moment between events, Donovan updated her on developments at Norfolk. Mitchell accessed another secure server this morning. He's getting sloppy taking risks. The technical team is using his access patterns to map additional network connections. And Adams, Kate asked. He's been brought in for debriefing. Confirmed he's been working with naval intelligence for the past 4 months. His handler suspected Mitchell based on anomalous communications detected during a routine security sweep. Kate nodded, pieces falling into place. What about the Pentagon leak? We've narrowed it to 3 possibilities. All are under surveillance. We should have confirmation by tonight. The second phase of the operation commenced that evening with Kate's appearance on a primetime television interview. The carefully scripted conversation allowed her to present the Female SEAL program in terms that serve both public relations objectives and operational security, while intelligence teams monitored viewer data for unusual access patterns that might indicate Frost's surveillance. Back at the secure facility after the broadcast, Kate found Barnes reviewing new intelligence. We've confirmed increased activity at the Georgetown location, he reported. Multiple secure communications deliveries of electronic equipment, additional personnel arriving. All indicators suggest final preparations for a major intelligence operation. Is it Frost? Kate asked. We've captured partial facial recognition from a balcony camera that matches historical images with 73% probability. Not enough for absolute confirmation, but significant. I need to see the images, Donovan insisted, joining them. When the analyst displayed the grainy surveillance photos, Donovan studied them intently. The posture is right, he said finally. The way he stands with his weight balance, that's Frost. I'd stake my career on it. Kate examined the images. Though she'd never encountered Frost personally, she'd studied his file extensively. If it is him, he'll have multiple escape routes, planned contingencies for every scenario. Which is why tomorrow's operation needs to be flawless, Barnes said. We get one shot at this. The final phase of the plan called for Kate to attend a military charity gala at a hotel adjacent to the Georgetown location. Her high-profile attendance would serve as the perfect distraction for a joint FBI military counterintelligence operation to finally capture Frost and dismantle his network. As Kate prepared in her secure quarters that night, she received an unexpected visitor. Captain Jessica Rivera, recently extracted from her European operation, entered the room with the silent movement that marked all special operators. "Couldn't let you have all the fun," Rivera said with a tight smile. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from years of successful high-risk missions. "Jess," Kate embraced her briefly, "I'm sorry your operation was compromised." "Not your fault," Rivera assured her. "The mission was nearly complete anyway, and this Frost situation takes priority." She sat on the edge of the bed. "So tomorrow we bait the trap. That's the plan. I make a very public appearance, draw attention, while the counterintelligence team moves on his location." Rivera nodded, then asked the question that had been lingering unspoken. "And Michelle," Kate's expression tightened slightly, "still in place. Her operation is too critical to abort. We're implementing additional security protocols, but she remains exposed until we neutralize Frost." "Then we better not miss tomorrow," Rivera said simply. The morning brought final preparations for the evening operation. Kate and Rivera were briefed on extraction protocols, emergency responses, and communication procedures. Every detail was meticulously reviewed, contingencies established for multiple scenarios. "The key is maintaining normal patterns until the exact moment we move," the tactical commander explained. "Frost has decades of experience identifying counterintelligence operations. The slightest deviation from expected behavior will trigger his suspicions." By afternoon, the intelligence team had confirmed that Mitchell had been taken into custody at Norfolk, along with 2 other identified Russian assets. Importantly, the arrests had been conducted quietly with cover stories established to prevent alerting the broader network. Chen had been cleared of suspicion, while Adams had provided valuable intelligence on Mitchell's activities. At the Pentagon, the suspected security leak had been identified. A senior clerk in personnel management had been passing classified information to Russian handlers for nearly 2 years. With these elements of the network neutralized, attention focused entirely on the Georgetown operation. Kate dressed for the evening gala in formal naval attire, the silver pendant Donovan had given her visible at her throat. As she prepared to leave for the event, Donovan visited for a final briefing. 30 years I've been chasing Frost," he said quietly. "From Berlin to Baghdad, always one step behind. Tonight, that changes." Kate recognized the personal significance this mission held for Donovan. "We'll get him, sir." Donovan nodded, then added, "Your primary responsibility remains your own safety. If anything goes wrong, you execute the extraction plan immediately. That's an order." "Understood," Kate replied, though both knew she would do whatever the mission required regardless of personal risk. The charity gala was already in full swing when Kate arrived, cameras flashing as she walked the red carpet. Her security detail, consisting of disguised special operators, maintained a protective formation while appearing to be standard protective services. Inside the elegant ballroom, Kate played her role perfectly, engaging with military officials, politicians, and celebrities who all seemed eager to meet the woman who had broken one of the military's final gender barriers. Throughout these interactions, she maintained constant situational awareness, noting positions of security personnel, exit routes, and any individuals displaying unusual attention patterns. "Counterintelligence 1 to Phoenix," came the voice in her discreet earpiece. "Surveillance confirms increased activity at target location. Multiple subjects moving to observation positions with line of sight to your location. Operation proceeding as anticipated." Kate acknowledged with a subtle hand signal to her wristwatch. Across the street, teams were moving into position, preparing to breach Frost's command center once final confirmation was received. At precisely 2130 hours, Kate excused herself from a conversation with a senior senator and moved toward the balcony area as planned, providing a clear visual target for any surveillance from the adjacent building. This movement was the signal for the operation to commence. "All teams execute," came the command over the secure channel. Kate continued to the balcony, engaging in casual conversation with another naval officer, while maintaining peripheral awareness of the operation unfolding across the street. Through her earpiece, she heard the tactical team's communications as they breached the target location. Alpha team in position, breach in 3, 2, 1, executing. Then chaos erupted. The tactical team encountered unexpected resistance, not just standard security, but prepared defensive positions with multiple armed operatives. The intelligence had been accurate about the location, but had underestimated Frost's security measures. Taking fire multiple armed subjects. Request immediate backup. Kate's training immediately kicked in, her mind processing tactical options even as she maintained her cover on the balcony. The operation was facing serious resistance, which meant Frost was likely attempting to escape via one of his contingency routes. That's when she saw him. A tall, distinguished man with silver hair exited a service door of the adjacent building, moving with the confident efficiency that came from decades of operational experience. Though she had never seen him in person, Kate instantly recognized Frost from countless intelligence photographs and Donovan's descriptions. Without hesitation, she activated her emergency channel. Phoenix to control, visual confirmation on primary target, exiting East Service entrance, moving to intercept. Negative Phoenix, Phoenix maintain position, came the immediate response from Donovan. Tactical team redirecting. But Kate had already made her decision. If Frost escaped now, the entire operation would be compromised, and Michelle Wilson would remain in danger. With practiced ease, she slipped away from the balcony, moving through the crowded ballroom toward the nearest exit. Rivera's voice came through her earpiece. "I'm on the north side. Give me 2 minutes to reach your position." "No time," Kate replied, pushing through the service exit and emerging into the alley between the buildings. "Target is mobile, moving east on foot." She pursued Frost at a measured distance, maintaining visual contact while calling in his position. He moved with the precise efficiency of someone executing a predetermined escape plan, not running but walking briskly to avoid attention. When Frost turned down a narrow side street, Kate accelerated, closing the distance. As she rounded the corner, she found herself face to face with the legendary operative. He stood calmly as if he had been waiting for her. "Petty Officer Blackwood," he said in lightly accented English. "Or should I say Phoenix, I've been looking forward to meeting you." Kate maintained combat readiness while assessing the situation. Frost appeared unarmed, but his reputation suggested he was dangerous regardless. "The building is surrounded. Your network has been compromised. It's over." Frost smiled slightly. Is it Mitchell was identified too easily? Chen was investigated too thoroughly. Adams played his role perfectly. Did it never occur to you that the entire operation might be misdirection? A cold realization began to form in Kate's mind. "What are you saying? That you've been looking in the wrong place? Norfolk was merely a secondary operation. The real target has always been elsewhere." Kate's thoughts raced to Michelle Wilson, still deployed in Asia. "What have you done?" "Nothing yet," Frost replied calmly. "Lieutenant Commander Wilson remains uncompromised for now. Her fate depends on what happens in the next few minutes." Kate heard movement behind her as Rivera arrived, weapon drawn. "Target acquired," Rivera reported into her communication system. "Awaiting tactical team." Frost seemed unperturbed by the arrival of the second operator. "Captain Rivera, I presume the third member of your groundbreaking trio. How convenient to have two of you in one location." "What do you want?" Kate demanded, recognizing that Frost's calm demeanor suggested he still believed he held the advantage. "A simple exchange. You allow me to walk away, and the operation targeting Wilson is aborted. My people are in position awaiting my command. If I don't contact them within 15 minutes, they proceed." Kate and Rivera exchanged glances, each calculating the same probabilities. Frost was a master manipulator. There was no guarantee he was telling the truth about Wilson. But they couldn't risk their teammate's life on that assumption. "How do we verify Wilson's safety?" Kate asked. Frost removed a phone from his pocket, activated it, and turned the screen toward them. It showed a live video feed of Michelle Wilson entering what appeared to be a secure military facility unaware of surveillance. "This is happening now," Frost explained. "My operatives are in position. One word from me and they stand down. Otherwise, the tactical team was close now." Kate could hear them securing the surrounding streets. They had perhaps 30 seconds before they arrived at the current location. It was Donovan who made the decision, his voice coming through their earpieces with the authority of decades of operational command. "Let him go. Wilson's safety takes priority. Kate lowered her stance slightly, creating an opening in the containment. Your network is still compromised. You've lost your Norfolk operation and your Georgetown base. Small sacrifices in a larger game, Frost replied with professional detachment. This isn't the first time I've rebuilt Petty Officer Blackwood, though I must admit you and your female colleagues have proven more formidable than anticipated. Perhaps there's merit to your country's experiment after all. As he moved past them toward his escape route, Frost added a final comment. Commander Donovan has pursued me for 30 years. Tell him this doesn't end our game, it merely advances to the next level. Moments after Frost disappeared into the urban landscape, the tactical team arrived, securing the area but finding no trace of the target. Kate and Rivera reported directly to Donovan, who had arrived at the scene personally. He knew our moves before we made them, Kate explained. The entire Norfolk operation may have been elaborate misdirection to test our responses while positioning assets near Wilson. Donovan's expression was grim but not defeated. We've exposed significant portions of his network. That's not nothing, and Wilson has been alerted she'll be extracted within the hour. He'll disappear again, Rivera noted. Probably already has a new identity prepared. Yes, Donovan agreed, but now he knows what we're capable of. And for the first time in 30 years, we forced him to abandon an operation. That's progress. The aftermath of the operation unfolded rapidly over the next 72 hours. Michelle Wilson was successfully extracted from her Asian assignment, bringing all 3 female SEALs to secure locations. The Norfolk network was completely dismantled, with Mitchell and his associates facing espionage charges. The Pentagon's security breach was contained with comprehensive countermeasures implemented to prevent similar vulnerabilities. 6 days after the Georgetown operation, Kate found herself in a secure briefing room at the Pentagon with Rivera, Wilson, Donovan, and Admiral Barnes. The mood was mixed acknowledgement of partial success combined with recognition of Frost's escape. The Secretary of Defense has made a decision regarding the future of the female SEAL program, Barnes announced. Given recent events and the demonstrated effectiveness of all 3 of you, the program will not only continue but expand. With appropriate security protocols, Donovan added. Your identities are now known, but future female operators will maintain the same covert status as their male counterparts in sensitive operations. And our current assignments, Wilson asked. At 34, she was the oldest of the 3 and had been the first to attempt SEAL qualification. That's why we're here, Barnes replied, distributing folders to each of them. We're establishing a new specialized unit under Commander Donovan's leadership. Its primary mission will be counterintelligence operations targeting high-value threats like Frost's network. Kate opened her folder, reviewing the operational parameters of the new unit. It would combine intelligence gathering with direct action capabilities, leveraging the unique skills all 3 women had demonstrated. You want us to hunt Frost, Rivera stated simply. Among other objectives, Barnes confirmed. Your public exposure creates limitations for certain operations, but provides unique advantages for others. No one will question your presence at diplomatic functions, military installations, or public events, the perfect cover for counterintelligence work. Donovan addressed Kate directly. Those 45 seconds in the mess hall changed everything, but not in the way anyone anticipated. You've proven that the most effective operators aren't defined by gender, but by skill, judgment, and adaptability. What about Mitchell and the others? Kate asked. Cooperating in exchange for sentencing considerations, Barnes replied. The intelligence they're providing is helping us map additional elements of Frost's infrastructure. Chen has been fully cleared and has actually requested to join the counterintelligence division. Adams has been recommended for advanced training based on his performance during the operation. The briefing continued with detailed operational planning for the new unit, but Kate found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the grueling SEAL training to covert operations around the world, from maintaining her cover identity to becoming the public face of a classified program, each step had prepared her for this new challenge. As the meeting concluded, Donovan asked Kate to remain behind. When they were alone, he spoke with unusual emotion. Sarah would have been proud of what you've accomplished, he said, referencing his fallen daughter. Not just the operational success, but how you've handled everything, the public scrutiny, the political complications, the personal challenges. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Kate replied sincerely. Donovan shook his head slightly. You had the capability all along. All I did was create the opportunity. He paused, then continued. Frost was right about one thing: this isn't over. It's advanced to the next level. He'll resurface eventually. And we'll be ready, Kate assured him. 3 months later, Kate stood before a class of midshipmen at the Naval Academy, conducting a lecture on adaptive leadership in changing operational environments. The class included a significant number of female students, many of whom had been inspired by her story to pursue more challenging career paths. The most important lesson from my experience isn't about combat techniques or operational planning, she told them. It's about adaptation. When my cover was blown in that mess hall, everything changed in 45 seconds. My entire operational framework collapsed, and I had to immediately adjust to a new reality. A young female midshipman raised her hand. Ma'am, how did you handle the transition from operating in secret to being in the public eye? By remembering the mission fundamentals, Kate replied. The methods changed, the profile changed, but the core objective remained the same: serve effectively and protect our operational capabilities. After the lecture, Kate met briefly with Rivera and Wilson, who had been conducting similar engagements at other military institutions. Together, they had become symbols of a changing military culture, not through political advocacy, but through demonstrated excellence. Any word on our primary target? Wilson asked quietly as they walked across the academy grounds. Nothing concrete, Kate replied, but intelligence suggests activity in Eastern Europe. We deploy next week for diplomatic observations. Rivera smiled slightly. Back to the real work. It never stopped, Kate noted, just changed form. That evening, Kate returned to her quarters and found a small package waiting for her. Inside was a chess piece, a black knight with no note. She immediately recognized the significance. Frost was signaling that their contest continued, the next move awaiting. Without hesitation, Kate secured the item for intelligence analysis and activated her emergency protocols. The game had indeed advanced to the next level, but this time she wasn't playing from the shadows. This time she had stepped into the light, transforming what seemed to be a catastrophic exposure into a strategic advantage. Those 45 seconds in a Norfolk mess hall had changed not just her career, but potentially the future of special operations. As she prepared for the coming confrontation with Frost, Kate touched the silver pendant at her throat, a reminder of legacy, sacrifice, and the continuing mission. The next chapter was just beginning.